This is Taugrim. In the midst of the controversy for patch 1.5 regarding class balance, there was something I noticed that people frequently mentioned, namely that ranged DPS are too squishy in this game and that they need survivability buffs. So I recorded one of the first Warfronts that I stepped into today. It was a Codex match, and I wanted to take a look at how players are managing their position, their movement, and their emergency cooldowns. I'm playing the same spec here that I played before patch 1.5. It's a melee healer spec, and I'm AoEing in case there are any stealth rogues about. Right here, a warrior drops down from the opposing side and exposes himself to massive focus fire, and he didn't have a healer lined up, and he had friendly ranged DPS up on top of the rock, so he didn't really need to come down. And then that healer was standing on the edge of the cliff, so I just knock her off, and basically we remove those two players very quickly from the fight, which allows us to assault Codex. So I come up on the rock here. There's a caster cleric who has no idea, or caster has no idea that I'm there. Go ahead and punt that player down to Codex, where I'm hoping my allies will finish her off. And then this player here is casting 3-second long cast spells, which makes no sense in this type of situation. I interrupt the first cast. She's healing debuffed, and then we burn her down. And then we find another cleric who's also healing debuffed. It's much more common in patch 1.5 to be healing debuff because rogues have it too, as well as warriors. And we quickly burn down this player. And what's really odd to me is there were two enemy ranged DPS standing very nearby, and they didn't take any actions to pre-kite, which is to create some separation, or to kite once we start to DPS. So for example, this player here is running in a circle, not making it difficult at all for us to kill them. And we burn down those players and then finish off this warrior. So it's really important to pre-kite, which is to position yourself or avoid situations where you're going to get run over, and then when you are getting pressure to kite, to create that separation and use your global cooldowns to escape. Now right here, check this out. This enemy cleric doesn't bother to turn around and face us, so she's not getting any possibility of parrying our attacks, and we go ahead and burn her down. And then this marksman rogue, who has the longest range in the game, 35 meters, runs over basically to us and has to burn a global cooldown to create separation, but he's already in trouble and his health is low. And what I find really amusing is right here, this player pops on the double, which is a run buff that prevents him from being CC'd, but he runs back through the Guardian lines and ends up getting burned down. So that player made multiple mistakes. He didn't manage distance, he didn't use his cooldowns in time, and when he did use his cooldowns, he ran in the wrong direction. So, I don't think any amount of buffs is going to help that kind of situation. Now this player right here I have targeted was in a good place. That's another marksman rogue. That rogue was standing off to the side, and up to now hasn't been noticed by anyone except for me. And right here, when that rogue on the right is located by a warrior, that rogue creates separation and backs up into their lines. That's a very smart way to play, and that player did very well in this Warfront. I tried to help finish off that warrior there. I battle charged to him, but he did his full heal. And right now I'm pre-kiting. We're way outnumbered. We're by their graveyard. I know we're going to get run over. I punt that rogue back and then go around the rocks to get out of line of sight and start riding away. The only catch with ranged DPS in this game is they have a mile-long range, especially 30 meters for ranged DPS and 35 for marksmen. So I get knocked off my mount, but at least I create a little separation and I never stop moving. I'm always strafing. And check this out. I cut left, punt the player to the right, and then drop off to the rocks to the left, which allows me to mount up and not be interrupted while getting on my mount. So, a lot of what I see is players not managing distances correctly. The player in this Warfront who had the best ratio of killing blows to deaths was a Defiant caster cleric, who I only saw once in the match relative to everybody else, and I think that's because that player was consistently using good positioning and not exposing herself to focus fire. So right here I'm getting hammered. I start to strafe-kite. I've got a caster and two warriors on me, another ranged DPS up on the hill. So I burn my emergency 5-minute cooldown, pop my tanking stance to buff my armor, and then strafe-kite off the cliff. One really important thing about kiting or strafing, I talked to players, some folks didn't understand what it meant. It's simply running sideways using the default Q or E keys, and if you do that, you retain your forward facing so you can attack and you can defend yourself. Now, check this out. Defiants have the node, but these two Defiant ranged DPS are on our side of the flag. When they have range, they could actually be sitting by or behind the flag and DPSing, but instead they've exposed themselves, and this Warlock was doing an AoE, so I just back out of it, out of range, and we finish him off. And then this rogue here was within 20 meters because I was able to battle charge to him, and this is the same rogue who died at scope, who, ran into melee range of us and then didn't use his cooldowns properly. So, these are easy to avoid situations in terms of deaths. Both the Warlock and the Rogue could have started back further when they saw, that pressure was coming. They could have kited out of it or used that pillar. Since they were holding the node, it's not incumbent upon them to try to kill us. They should be defending the node, not trying to go on offense and getting themselves killed. So right here I'm taking heavy focus fire. I go ahead and drop down below the cliff, and I'm trying to cleanse myself as I'm running, but I'm silenced, and as soon as the silence wears off, I punt that rogue away, that warrior away from me, and then heal up. And you notice I turn the corner around that pillar. It's really important to use line of sight like that, and then this warrior is underneath the cliff and most likely not getting heals, so we drop that player. This player right here too, this is a 4K player, 4,000 health player, extremely squishy, who inexplicably jumped down among us, and we killed that player very quickly. Now right here I make a bonehead mistake. I battle charge into a ranged DPS when there are multiple ranged DPSers firing at me, and I'm giving them open focus fire lane. So that was a dumb thing. I'd only died twice in this match, and that death there was totally avoidable. Now we kill a caster there who's way overextended, and I'm taking some fire from a rogue. You can see it's long range, but he can still target me from 35 meters out. So I go ahead and strafe right onto the rocks, get out of his line of sight, and then we burn down this overextended warrior. Now I had mentioned a caster DPS cleric had the best ratio, 11 killing blows to 1 death. This is the player right here. He's DPSing me, which is smart because I'm the healer here. I punt him off the rocks so that he can't have line of sight and attack me. And we finish off with these players. That warrior was overextended, rogue was overextended, the caster DPS cleric who was trying to kill me was also overextended, but that was the only time in this whole match where I saw that caster cleric in a bad position. Here's another cleric who's trying to pick up the red ball and is being chased by multiple players. And one thing that I noticed is that it looks like this player right here turns and gives up their back to me. So they're running, facing away from me, and that's a big no-no in PvP. You don't ever want to give up your facing when their opponent's behind you, especially because some classes have positional bonuses. Like, for example, the assassin tree, they get bonuses when they hit you from behind. Now, this rogue here is really smart. That one right there, I tried to punt off the cliff. They use a gap controller to teleport back next to me, and it's really important, like that rogue did, to have a good reaction time on your gap closers and to hotkey them in a place which is easily accessible. So chasing a warrior here, and I'm making a stay behind him as much as possible. So right here the warrior starts to turn right, so I strafe left to stay behind him and remove parry from his defense table. Now that rogue who had done the really smart thing and ported back to avoid being knocked off the cliff is just taking massive focus fire. This is a good player. I've seen this person before. Not much that person can do in that situation, but they did help to hold the node as long as possible. So we come up onto this rock here, and this particular marksman rogue that we're attacking ended up finishing top some damage in the Warfront. This person is unnecessarily face tanking a warrior and me, and the only reason why this person survives here is because they get bailed out healing by the res wave that's coming up. So we go ahead and I get snared there. I pop Dissolution to remove the snare effect, drop off the cliff, heal up once, and then start spamming my cleanses to remove all the debuffs on me. Now, in 1.5, you can cleanse the rogue debuffs, and really whether you do or not depends on whether you can spare the global cooldowns, because sometimes you have to cast your cleanse multiple times to take off the particular Fellblaze or Vampiric munitions buff. So, debuff. Now, this rogue right here is making the cardinal sin. This person is walking backwards. They're backpedaling in PvP. And if you need to create a gap, it's the worst thing you can do because you move so slowly when you're backpedaling. The better thing to do is to strafe, to run sideways, as I've been demonstrating and talking about in this video. And we're starting to lose our hold of Codex. There are more Defiants here than Guardians. I'm making my way back to Codex, and then that rogue that I was attacking actually this time used his cooldowns and got out of line of sight properly. Now I'm taking massive focus fire. I cleanse Vampiric munitions, pop my full heal, switch to tanking stance, and then try to strafe-kite tight around this pillar. But in that case, the damage coming in was too much, and I died. And in that case, I played it correctly, but with the higher damage at 1.5, and I was taking focus fire from multiple players, sometimes it's just going to happen. Now this rogue again, not using the distance properly. The rogue was well inside their 35-meter range, which makes no sense. And it's really important to manage distances in a game like this. So you'll see me do this in a moment here. A warrior comes down, is attacked from me, and I'm getting shot at by multiple players up on the rocks on the cliff above me. So I strafe kite out of the AoE and out of their range. And if I didn't do this, you'll see how low my health gets in a minute. If I hadn't strafe-kited away as quickly as I did, I would have built up a massive health deficit, HP deficit, and died. But as you can see, because I got out of trouble early, I anticipated the problem coming, kited away from it, and then I'm able to use this pillar to stay alive. And then that rogue who's chasing me, this is like another good rogue. I think that was the same one who's shooting from the side at translation scope, which is a very smart thing to do. So I finish Thompson healing and double the output of the next friendly healer, second in damage taken, and curiously, I finish 8th overall in damage, and it's not because I have high sustained or burst damage, it's merely a function of my staying alive, by using my mobility mechanics and trying to anticipate trouble and staying out of it. And this is one of the things about Rift. Ranged DPS in this game have a tremendously long range of 30 plus meters and tend to have multiple escape mechanics. I just don't see people leveraging those things to the extent that they should be.